Welcome to the Tzurba Hilchot Shabbat Program with Rabbi Shalom Rosner. Tzurba is a revolutionary halacha sefer which guides you through over 300 topics in Jewish law in a unique signature style. In this weekly series specifically, Rabbi Shalom Rosner learns through the Tzurba Hilchot Shabbat volumes, helping us all master the Halachot of Shabbat in just 2 years.
Okay, let's get into the third Shiur here of volume number 20. Again, the volume Tomi the Lax family has graciously sponsored all the volumes, and this volume is the Niyaza family volume about personal care on Shabbos, animals on Shabbos, muksa. These are some of the issues that we'll discuss. We just had 2 shiurim about rechitza, about washing and all the related issues, and this shiur will be about hair, dealing with hair and nails and other things like that come up on Masechah Shabbos, and we'll get into some general yisodos as we will see. So the Gemara tells us we're on page number 73 in these shiurim. We know the first 11 malachas on the list are Sidur de Pas, the 11 malachas that are the creation of baking bread, and the next, Gozes, is the next halacha. It's the first in the series of 13 malachas that's about making begadim. The Gemara only uses that phrase Sidur de Pas for the bread, those 13. The other ones are not classified or broken down by the Gemara, but they're the Mefarshim, the Tosfos Yantav, our Mishnayos, breaks it up for us. So Gozes is shearing the wool. Says the Rambam in source number 1 in Hilchos Shabbos, Hagozes tzemer o seyar. If somebody shears wool or hair, bein min behema, bein min chaya, whether it's from an animal or a different types of animal, bein chai, bein min mace, even from a dead animal. Afilu min hashelach shalahen, from its skin, chayiv. Removing the wool is cutting any type of hair or wool from an animal. What's the nature of the yisur? So if you look at the Menuchas Ha'ava, you have it there, the definition of the malacha. Bahus malachas gozisi nituk va'akiras dvarim hagdelim b'skuf balechayim. Cutting something that is growing or naturally comes out of a live being. That could be a person, that could be an animal. When it comes to a plant, that's kotzer. That's not gozes. Kotsaro, siparnayim, nails, hair, gildi oros lachim. We'll have to get to other types of blisters or warts. Shekin matzanim b'mlechas avodas hamishkan, because we find by the Mishkan, shegozim semer mibehemos, they used to shear the wool. They used to shear the wool. So that is the malacha. Cutting off a limb, that's not gozes, right? That's the hagchotech aver meivari balichayim eino b'chal gozes, right? Because that is part of the guf. That's not growing from. Gozes is cutting off something growing from the guf, but cutting off a limb is not. Eivari balichayim im chelik miguf balichayim veinim gdelim beguf balichayim, and therefore that wouldn't be the same. So the primary purpose of the malach of gozes seems to be that you want what you shear off. You want the wool. Right, that's generally you want the item that you are cutting. So the question is, what about nails? What about cutting your nails? Generally, when we cut our nails, we are not interested in collecting the nails. Right? There's even a halacha. You have to burn the nails. We say we have to flush the nails in the toilet. But so what exactly if I cut my nails? So is that gozes? Is that gozes daraisa? Gozes derabanan? Says the Mishnah in Shabbos, source number 3. Hanotot si part of zubazu. If somebody cuts his nails, o b'shinav, o b'sarav, cheitzvamo, Rebbe Eliezer Machai, Rebbe Eliezer says yes, chayiv daraisa of gozes. If somebody cuts his nails, we'll see with what. If somebody cuts his nails on Shabbos, it's an issa daraisa according to Rebbe Eliezer. V'cham omrim osur mishum shvus. V'cham say no, issa d'rabanan. Issa d'rabanan. What's the issue here? So first of all, the Gemara limits it, and the Gemara says, Amar Rebbe Eliezer, machlokes biyad. The machlokes is biyad, meaning if I'm cutting my nails with my other hand, with my teeth, that's all d'rabanan. That's the machlokas d'oraisa d'rabanan. Aval b'kli chayiv, but everybody agrees you're chayiv d'oraisa for using a clipper, for using a scissors for cutting your nails. So wait a minute, I don't want the nails. Is that really asur d'oraisa? Is that similar to what was done in the Mishkan? So this is a major machlokas rishonim. If you look at Tosfos on the page there in Daf Tzadi Dalet, Tosfos talks about this Mishnah, and this Mishnah that says chayiv according to everybody. If you do a bekli, says Tosfos, that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, who says malacha shein tzricha legufa is chayiv on Shabbos. Malacha shein tzricha legufa means, remember we discussed that in the earlier shiurim, that means many different definitions, but Tosfos' definition. I'm doing it for the same malacha hatzricha legufa means I'm doing it for the same purpose that it was done in the Mishkan. That's da'araisa. That's meleches machsheves. But if it's done for a different reason that was done in the Mishkan, so then I'm going to be pater. That's Rabbi Shimon Shita. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if you do it for a different reason that was done in the Mishkan, you're still going to be chayiv. Rashi has a different definition of what malachas she'ein tzricha legufa is. You're doing it for a reason to prevent something. Preventative. B'rtzono lo hayabalo. But we're not going to get deeply into that sugya right now. But Tosfos says, this case where you're cutting your nails, you don't want the nails. So it's called a malachas she'ein tzricha legufa. And therefore, this Mishnah and Gemara must only be going according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara doesn't say it. The Gemara often says, this Mishnah is like this, and this Mishnah is like that. So that's a little difficult for Tosfos. Why didn't the Gemara say it? But Tosfos says that this Mishnah is only Rabbi Yehuda, who holds malachas she'ein tzricha legufa is chayiv. And therefore, it makes a lot of sense that the Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yehuda against most Rishonim. The Rambam paskins like Rabbi Yehuda, the malachas she'ein tzricha legufa is chayiv d'oraisa, and that's why here the Rambam says in source number 6, Hanotel tzipar navosaro sfamo. If somebody cuts their nails, or hair or mustache, o zekana, how is it told us, godis v'chayiv. That is a told of gozis. That's shearing, and one is chayiv. Vushito b'kli, avalim notlam biyado, bein lo bein lacher pater. If you don't use a kli, that's not called normal. That's called shinui. Shinui makes it d'Rabbanan. So if I bite my nails, if I use a clip, my other hand to cut, so that's going to be also d'Rabbanan. But if I use a clipper, that's going to be aser d'oraisa. That's going to be aser d'oraisa, and that's what it seems to be. The Rambam paskins like this Mishnah, and it's a malachas she'ein tzricha legufa, and they're going to be chayiv if you do that. Interesting, just parenthetically. Nowadays, do more people cut their nails with a clipper or cut their nails, bite their nails? Maybe biting nails has come to mean even more common, or it's defined inherently. Inherently, it's not a fine way of cutting one's nails, and therefore one might say that inherently it's going to be called a shinui. But this is only one way to understand. If you look in the Rivash in Shin Tzadi Daled, one of the late Rishonim, Talmud of the Ran, the Rivash says, no. The Gemara doesn't say that this is limited to Rabbi Yehuda. So I think this is even according to Rabbi Shimon. This is not, cutting your nails, is not a malachas she'ein tzricha legufa. You are attaining a constructive, positive result. What are you doing? What's the malacha? The malacha could be, you are being meyapeh your guf, your body. And therefore, even Rabbi Shimon could agree that you're chayiv here. We don't focus on whether you wanted the nails or not. Right? That's not the issue. Says the Rivash in source number 7, Hanotas Himarna Bekli, even though the nails are going to be thrown out, chayiv, afilu Rabbi Shimon. Even according to Rabbi Shimon, even if you say malachas she'ein tzricha legufa is pater, you're going to be chayiv here. Shari netila hi hamalacha. Because the malacha is the cutting, the shearing, v'chein b'seir, and also the hair. Geziza ha'isa b'mishkan. And you want to say it wasn't in the Mishkan? In the Mishkan they had. What if they had the smooth hides for some of the curtains? They had to take the hair off of the hides. So even shalol l'tzorach hater v'seir, rak l'tzorach or, and therefore the Rivash says this is even according to Rabbi Shimon, to cut your nails with a clipper is an iser d'oraisa, according to Rabbi Shimon, because it's not called a malacha she'ein tzricha, not called a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. And this is quoted. This is a machlokas that had this in the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says in Shin Mem, Shulchan Aruch says, it quotes this halacha that you're not allowed to cut your nails. Also, litot tzarot tziparnav. It's also to cut one's hair or nails, bein biyad, bein b'kli, whether yad or kli, bein la'atzma, bein la'cherim, v'chayav shtei cyrus, you're chayiv. So that's the Rambam. So that's the Shulchan Aruch. So who is that like? So says the Vilna Gaon, it must be the Shulchan Aruch is quoting the Rambam, like Tosfos understands, because malachas she'ein tzricha legufa is chayiv, and we paskin malachas she'ein tzricha legufa chayiv then. If this is why the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Rambam, which would have tremendous ramifications for many other cases. Says the Gra, there, on that Shulchan Aruch, this Shulchan Aruch about cutting the nails, Sasam Kedas HaRambam, Da'alacha Rabbi Yehuda, B'malachas she'ein tzricha legufa, V'asugya zu muchach. Wow. Says the Gra, where we said that Tosfos is a little difficult, because after all, the Gemara doesn't link this to Rabbi Yehuda. The Gra turns it on its side, turns it upside down. No, this Gemara doesn't say it, because it must be the Gemara saying Stam Mishnah, that's the halacha. And therefore the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, And that is a raya that maybe this is where the Rambam got it from. Or the Rambam decided to pass him like Rabbi Yehuda, because this Mishnah is a Stam Mishnah. It says Chayiv, and it must be according to Rabbi Yehuda. But if you look in the Mishnah Berurah, the Bir Halacha says, who said this is true? Right? We said that even if you say Malach Guf is Pater, the Rivash says you're Chayiv in this case, because this is not an Ein Tzrich L'Gufa. And therefore it says the Bir Halacha in source number 10, who says the Graz right? Right? Who says this is the basis for the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch? Tosfos and the Rambam? Maybe not. Maybe like the Rivash. And therefore, after quoting the Tosfos and the Gra, says the Bir Halacha. V'nei Rivash, I'm on page 77 now. Rivash Kasav, the Meleches HaGaziza, Chashiva Melacha L'Kulei Alma. Afilu Ein Tzarech L'Seir. Right? It's Chashiv Melacha. Even if you don't want it. Because it's beautifying, you're creating a constructive, beautiful nails. Kasav Aran, he says, Hoavi Tzarech Liyapos Atzmo Begizazu. You are beautifying yourself in this shearing. That's also gozes, like they used to shear the skins in the days of old. So this is a machlokas rishonim, whether this whole case is a malach jesich legufa with a big nafkamina. Meaning, if you say this is chayiv, does that prove that you hold malach jesich legufa as chayiv in all cases, or do we say that this could also be like Rabbi Shimon, and this is not a case? So malach jesich legufa. Interesting. There's a similar discussion by Borer. Right, there are some Rishonim that say Borer is an exception to the rule of Malacha Jesich Legufa, because inherently, what's the Malacha of Borer? I take out the bad from the good. That's what's aser. So that isn't that a Malacha Jesich Legufa? You're taking out bad, right? So that's Ein Tzrich Legufa. That's what they did in the Mishkan, was that they separated. They took what they want, not that bad. So maybe, and you're chayav for Borer. So maybe Borer is an exception to the rule of Malacha Jesich Legufa. So if you look in the Mishnah Berurah, in the beginning of Shin Yutes in the Bir Halacha, in Hilchos Borer, he says maybe not. He quotes from the Yeshuas Yaakov that no, maybe Borer is, the Malacha is Tikun HaOchel. That's the key definition. So it's Tzricha Legufa. Tikun HaOchel is the definition of the Malacha. And Dibur Maschal Lechol Miyad, in the beginning of Shin Yutes, he quotes this from the Yeshuas Yaakov, and he says that's the answer. That's the answer. Dileini malachas borer shapsoles nirei lachila v'gam ochel niroi gala kain mafred psoles malacha ina nikreis al breiras hapsoles rak de misakein haochel sheiroi lachila v'zeo malacha tzricha leguf haochel demash v'lei ochel gamor. So that is a possibility. So just like you have the discussion here by Gozes, you have a similar discussion by borer. Okay, so that's in terms of nails. So what about hair? So I'm sorry, before we get to hair, other points of nails. What if somebody has a hangnail and it really hurts? So you can't cut your nails. And biting your nails, somebody once said, if you bite your nails without thinking, and one doesn't realize it, they have to be very careful, because they might start biting on Shabbos. That's an Issa D'Rabbanan, even if you don't think about it. Misasik. That's what misasik. So maybe one should just be careful about that. But what if it hurts? So the Gemara says, Sadi Dalan Mabez, if it hurts and most of it's off, so then it's an Issa D'Rabbanan b'makam choli, and it's mutter to take off. So that's what the Gemara says. Lachas like Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who makes this ha'ara mitza'aros so. Right, if it's rove off, and it hurts, and I take it off not with the clipper, but with my fingers, or I bite it off, so that's mutter, because that is. And this is the Rabbanim Makam Choli, and the Shulchan Aruch Paskins that way. Shulchan Aruch in source number 12 in Shin Chav Ches, Tziporen Shepirsha, a fingernail that's separated, in Pirshu Ruban, if most of it is off, Umitsa Aros Oso, Lahasiran Biyad, Mutter Bikli Pater Avalasar. Right, Biyad is going to be mutter, because that's an Issa D'Rabbanan, B'makam Choli, with a Kli, is still, he says here, Biyad mutter b'kli pater avalasar, lo per sheruban pater avalasar b'kli chayiv chata. So once it's separated mostly, then already is a D'Rabbanan, even if you use a Kli. But it would be mutter if you take it off. That's like a double D'Rabbanan. As shvus to shvus, if you take it off, if it's mostly off and it's with your hands, a double D'Rabbanan Makam Choli would be allowed. What about removing? Now we're going to get to hair issues. Just removing hair and combing hair. The Hart Tzvi, Tzvi Pesach Frank discusses What about putting on some type of cream? Sometimes certain women put some types of creams on their temples to remove certain hair or other parts of the body. That's not allowed, right? Gozes doesn't need the maisa geziza to act of cutting, of shearing. Even if I do something else, if I smear hair, that also is called a maisa geziza. That's the normal way in certain circles, in certain cases, to remove hair, and that would be usher as well. As well, and the Hard says maybe even in a daraisa. Rabbanon Modem Rabbi Eliezer, the Melacha Daraisa, Shenis Kalin, Alahal. But Rav Tzvi Pesach says in a different shuva, and Rav Moshe also writes this, and that is removing feathers, let's say, from a piece of chicken. Removing that, so that a nof mavushal, that's not gozes. Says with Har Tzvi, and again Rav Moshe also, source 14, Aldavar she'ela bitzaver shal of mevushal. Shenishar lav notzos. Could you remove the feathers if it's cooked? Yishar lazar zrosas b'Shabbos lachora mikiven shekvar mavushal ein bo gozes. Since it's already mavushal, there's no gozes for two reasons. Number one, shebe mavushal mitam mishum shekazes bashal shem basar olav. Once it's cooked, it's all one thing. It's all basar. It's all food. So it's all food. You're separating food from food. That's not separating the feathers. It's not looked at as growing from it anymore. Va'od efshar the kivan shekvar mavushal sof atzosas linatik mitzavar. It's already loosened and it's already semi-out by the time you get it, and therefore there's no gozi. It's ki'ilu pirshu ruban. The Tzvi Pesach compares it to. One other fascinating discussion, which is not in your booklet, and that is, we know the Torah matirs bris milah bismano on Shabbos. If a baby boy is born on Shabbos, the following Shabbos is his bris, as long as milah bismano. The Torah matirs that. Why? Because otherwise it would be usher. Which malacha would you be violating by bris milah? Which malacha? So Pashup Pshat, the Rishonim say chovel. Chovel is wounding, which itself is interesting, is not one of the 39 malachas. Which malacha is chovel under? Which av malacha is chovel under? So that's a discussion, whether it's, the Rambam says it's dash, and the Rabbi Natam says it's shochet, Rashi says tsoveya, right? Different types of, different opinions about that. But there is another opinion. Shida Mukubet says in the first parak of Ksubis says, bris milah would have been the malacha of gozes, of shearing. Wow, shearing. Didn't we say before, limb from limb is not gozes? How does Shimon Kubetza suggest that? Gozes. So suggest the Dvar Avram. The Dvar Avram, right? The Kavna. Rabbi Duber Kahana Shapiro from Kavna, he writes in the first Chelak in Siman Chav Gimel, he says, usually a limb is part of the body, and therefore there's no gozes. But the arla, the foreskin, is omed l'hinatel. It's omed to be cut off. It's omed l'higazes. So it's not meant to be another limb of the body. And therefore maybe that's why dafka there, by milah, it would be gozes. V'lai sfir l'ashim mekubetzas. Kivan da arla zu chayeves b'milah, v'omedes likatzets, lo mechsheva kvar kechelek min haguf. Wow. It's not called part of the body. V'dine kitzitze ar. It's like extra pieces of skin that you can't pull off for gozes. V'lochen l'shayich bo tolish. L'fize yish makom kol shulataris. And he quotes the other nafkaminas. So, you know what nafkaminas? Some achronim say, what happens if a Jew does milah to a guy on Shabbos? So milah of a Jew, that's only liikates. Of a guy, it's not called arla. Even though most goyim are circumcised today, there's no mitzvah there, so maybe that will be asur on Shabbos. Maybe asur on Shabbos. Interesting. So that's in terms of gozes, of cutting nails and dealing with biting nails, v'chulu. So what about hair? So one is not allowed to remove hair on Shabbos, right? That's the issur of gozes. What about combing one's hair? Combing one's hair. So combing, is that automatic? How hard do you comb? Right, we know the rules of psik reisha. Psik reisha means even if I have no kavana, if something is vaday going to happen in malacha, that's going to be asur d'oraisa. Unlike malacha she'isich legufa, where it's the same exact act but for a different reason. But here, psik reisha is, I have kavanah to comb my hair, but vaday, if I do it hard, hair is going to come out. So that's what the Mishnah says in Nazir. Not in Shabbos, in Nazir. The Mishnah in Nazir, that base talks about, why is it there? Because the Nazir can't cut his hair. So there too, the Mishnah says, a Nazir is allowed to softly brush his hair. Nazir chofef umafas, space avalo sorek, but he can't comb his hair very hard. Why could he do it softly? Because that's Rabbi Shimon. The other, Rabbi Shimon, davar she'einu miskavin is mutter. If you do an act which might or might not cause a malacha, that's mutter. That is Rabbi Shimon. But then the Gemara says, if you do things hard, so then if it's for sure going to come out, then you care about those things coming out, so then that would be a problem, right? And the Rashi says in Shabbos Daf Nun, Nazir bechol kechol adam b'Shabbos. And therefore the Shulchan Aruch says in Hilchos Shabbos, right? There's no Shulchan Aruch about Hilchos Nazirus. That's not Lamaisa. But the Shulchan Aruch says, Aser lisrok b'masrik b'Shabbos. So you see that Surah 17. You're not allowed to comb your hair on Shabbos. Afilu oso shosam mesir chazir she'i efshar shelo yaku cyrus, because it's impossible that hairs will not be uprooted, and therefore that is aser. Rama aval muter lachuf lefasis biad, but softly with one's hand, or maybe with a very soft brush with soft bristles. So then that would be okay. So lamaisa, anything that's psik reisha for the hair to come out is aser daraisa, probably to do, and anything where it's possible that the hair won't come out, so that will be mutter, because we pass like Rabbi Shimon. The Mishnah Berurah here explains the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says you can't use a masreik. Af im eino mechavin litzlishas haseir. Even if you don't have kavana to pull the hair out, gam kein aser. That would be psik reisha. It's a psik reisha, right? Because ubegamar isa v'chulu nafkamina afilu b'masog rach brushed eino psik reisha gam kein aser. You have to make sure it's very careful. So somebody once said, "But what do you mean? I'm going to look like a mess. I'm going to look like covered abrius." Covered abrius doesn't work by nisa daraisa. Yisrael to Rabbanan, we could be push away sometimes covered abrius. But so I have to do what I can. I have to like brush it down with my hand. You can't violate daraisas just to have to look a little more presentable. The Mishnah Berurah says that many people aren't aware of this idea of brushing the hair. He quotes from the Yeshuas Yaakov. Ra'isi anoshim mekilim. I've seen people that are lenient and meko. Lisrok rosham b'Shabbos, that comb their hair on Shabbos. It's like mutter. They don't think anything's wrong. Woe to my eyes that this is what I see. Terrible, says the Mishnah Berurah, quoting the Yeshuas Yaakov. Every rabbi has to get up in his town and warn. Make sure the crowd knows. Ula yishmu ve'yikchu musar. That's what the Yeshuas Yaakov says more than 100 years ago. It says the Mishnah Berurah that that which they say I have to, I shouldn't look like a mess. There are ways to do it. B'derech mutter, very soft, pushing down the hair, using the hand. Right? So therefore one has to be very careful in terms of whenever brushing hair would be vadai, would be a psik reisha, that would not be allowed. Again, a soft brush would be okay, but you have to be very, very careful, right? The Rivash also in that tshuva from before, source 19. Bachuros misaknos ma'atzei roshan. Again, even more important for girls to recognize this. If it's done softly, it's okay. Clearly, the Aruch HaShabbos says combing out for lice on Shabbos is a problem. Maybe bow rare also, but for sure, gozes. For sure, hair comes out. When you use that fine comb to get the lice out, that's for sure aser. Katan sheish b'saros of kinim nira dein l'sarka b'masrik samich. Right, you can't use that on Shabbos. And the Shmir Shabbos summarizes that it depends on the brush. Right, it depends on the act. Right, mutter la'adam lachachich benachas b'saros rosho in source 21. The Shmir Shabbos says it's mutter for a person to brush their hair very softly, ve'nachoshes, or their beard. If you're doing it softly, you don't have to be choshesh that you're going to tear out. What if somebody has food stuck in their beard? So take it out carefully. Hair might come out, but hair might not come out. And therefore, you're allowed to take it out of your beard. Wash it. Just be careful. Try not to pull out any hairs. Also, I'm not allowed to brush the hairs roughly with a comb or a brush. And not only that, but a comb or a brush, which are very fine, they're muksa. They're muksa, says the Shmir Shabbos. Pashtus doesn't mean muksa, it means klishamakta le'isr. So it's like a pen, like a stapler. They can move it, but you shouldn't just pick it up for no reason. If you have soft bristles with big space in between, that is okay. Again, anything soft is okay. Ramosha doesn't seem to like even soft brushes. Ramosha, the Igros Moshe in 22, B'devar lisrok asaros b'Shabbos aser. Bein b'masrek shu nikra comb. Bein b'kli asui miser chazir du nikra brush. So Moshe quotes comb and brush. They're both aser. Uvpashit shu adin kishenase habrush mishar saros lekashemeter. Moshe does not seem to like any heter of any kind of brushing. Rak l'sakin ma to pat down a little bit with a brush. That will be okay, but not more than that. The Alkid Yosef also is not into it. What happens? Mordechai Yo deals with. What if a woman has to go to the mikvah? So she should do all of her preparations before Shabbos. Fine. What if she didn't? What if she's in a rush and the kids something happened? So she can't brush her hair like she normally does on Friday night. So what? She should go to the mikvah? No. Says the Kol Elio, source 24 of Mordechai Elio, Isha shalot tfilas v'lo Shabbos, v'lo is tarka l'vnei Shabbos, she's tarka v'sar says tavchu, right? The hair's got, maybe she did it and then her hair's got disheveled again. And mutter lo is tarik v'lo Shabbos, no, tefas space beds boseha. Just use your fingers. Again, we try. Again, there's a miyut she'eno makpid. Remember, it's okay. Miyut she'eno makpid. We try to get out every little knot, but if it's a miyut she'eno makpid, the tefillah is good. So here you can't violate an isser to do a minhag. The minhag is to try to get out even chatzis of miyut she'eno makpid, but to violate an isser you can't do that. So you do your best. She does her best with the hands. Let's say it's a 3-day yontif, the second night of yontif. You're going to the mikveh. So again, it might have gotten into some knots till now, so she should do her best without taking out any hair. What about combing a sheitel? So here he quotes a couple of issues. What's the issue? So again, if the hair is going to be detached, that's not going to be gozes. There's no gozes. It was never alive. So the Ramah says maybe it's soser. It's breaking something. You're breaking a unit. So the Ramah says in Arachaim, Shilam Ezayin, in the days of old, they had brooms that every time you used the broom, some pieces fell off the broom from the bottom. So you can't use that on Shabbos, right? That's similar to this type of idea. You're not allowed to use this type of broom, brush, because the bristles might fall off, a durabanan type of soser. And the Mishnah Berurah says any type of kli like that. So if the hair is going to come out of the sheitel as you brush it, you've got to be very careful. The Shmir Shabbos says, again, to use a soft brush on the sheitel. In 27, Nachon lihimana bisrikas pe'anachris shaitel b'Shabbos v'yantif. Be careful not to brush it. Avodalachlik. You want to wear it, just soften it and pat it very softly. Rav Yashav and Rav Willig, they both quote here, allow it as long as it's done very softly and there's no intention to remove any hairs. Good. Last section relating to hair, and that is braiding hair and parting hair. So braiding hair is quoted here in the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Shabbos says, Godeles. Godeles, Rabbi Eliezer says Chayev, and the Chum say, Aser D'Rabbanan. What is Godeles? And others, Kocheles, Pokeses. We're going to focus on Godeles. Godeles means braiding the hair. Braiding the hair. So it's a machlokas Tanoim about braiding the hair, whether it's D'Oraisa D'Rabbanan. Which malacha is it? You're braiding hair. You're not pulling anything out. It's not gozes. So the Gemara says, the Gemara first tries to say it's oreges. You're weaving. It's like you weave threads. You're weaving hair. And then Gemara says no. That's chiderach hariga bakach. Is that normal weaving? Is on a person. So rather, Rabbi Yavo says it's an issa d'Rabbanan mishum bone, building. You're building. Rabbi Yavo says in the continuation of page 87, continuation of source 29. Kocheles bishum tzova'as, right? These makeup. We'll get to makeup Hashem next year. Godelos ubokeses bishum bone. Chiderach binyan bekach. Is there binyan by a person? And the answer is yeah, because it says by Chava when Isha was created. Vayiven Hashem Elokim es hatzela. Malamed Hakadosh Baruch Hu took Chava and brought her, and that's called a binyan. And therefore, there's an issa d'Rabbanan. Issa d'Rabbanan of bona is braiding the hair. And since there's an issa d'Rabbanan braiding, so undoing a braid would be soser. Right, because bona and soser usually go together, and that's what Tosfos says there in Shabbos Nun Zayin. V'sfarahi d'chiyechadish iser ba'asiyas kaliya, hachanami yichisur b'stiras kaliya, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Right, braiding hair should not be done on Shabbos. That is an issa d'Rabbanan of bona. It's not daraisa, but it's doma lebinyan. You're creating something, right? You're creating. We spoke last time about molid, right? That's also a d'Rabbanan of bona. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says here. The dummy The dami labinyan, so one shouldn't do it. Is it just a derech agav? The Gemara, that same Gemara in Shabbos Sadihei says there's another durabanan of boneh, and that's making cheese on Shabbos. Making cheese on Shabbos is boneh. Not allowed to make milk into cheese. But says the Gemara, but 1 second, you can make cheese on Yantif, right? Because that's one of the malachas that are mutim mishum ochal nefesh. So Tosfos asks a great question. They're in Shabbos Sadihei. If you can make cheese on Yantif, even though that's the malacha of boneh, why don't we say mitoch? By any malacha that's mutim mishum ochal nefesh, we say mitoch. Mitoch shochel litzarech ochal nefesh. You should be able to build your house on Yantif, because bone is mutter by the cheese. So that's a question. The Pnei Yeshua, others answer that, but feel free to look at that Tosfos Tzadi Hey Aman Aleph in Shabbos. Okay, but this is braiding. Braiding the hair or undoing a braid is daraisa. What about braiding a sheitel? So there, the Mishnah Berurah quotes Hakolas Seir Mipei Nachris Af Deim Bazeh Mishum Bone Azar Kabadim Mishum Oreg. That's oreg because it's not on a person. On a person, it's not derech ori bekach, but that's not on a person. So therefore, no braiding. Rosh Shlomo Zalman says in the Orcha Shabbos, braiding only means 3. If you have two parts of the hair that are combined, that's not a braid. That's not a braid. 3. You need 3 to make a braid, and this applies to both men and women, right? Even though it's more common by women, the Minchas Yitzchak says if it's a man also is subject to the same halachas, right? Amnam kol zeh. Right, there's no chiluk. If a man has long hair and making a braid, that would be the same isser. Making a braid with hands is usser, or you see the picture on page 89 with curlers. Anyway, one makes a braid. That would be a malacha of a boneh. Just again, brushing hair softly is okay, but just braiding the hair would be a problem. What about parting the hair? So the question is there a diuk from the Gemara? So if you look on page 90, the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Samach talks about hotzah. Half the Masechta is about hotzah. So the Gemara talks about a type of needle, an eyeless needle, in terms of carrying it out on Shabbos without an eruv. Is it called a piece of jewelry, or is it called a masa, a burden? So one side of it has like a golden piece, and therefore it's like a jewelry. Women would show it. So b'Shabbos l'maychas, yes, amarava tashel zav yesh la rosha. Right, it has a golden piece. So on a weekday, you use it, the sharp part, cholekas basaira. On a weekday, you use it to part the hair. On a Shabbos, you use it to show the gold. So what is that mashma? Only on a weekday you could use it to part the hair? You can't use it on Shabbos to part the hair? So the Rashi seems to say it's also to part your hair, right? To part your hair, what? That would be boneh also, D'Rabbanan. Tosfos says, I don't understand that. That's not braiding. Tosfos says, why would it be usher to part your hair? Right, it's braiding hair. Parting, that's not usher. And there Tosfos just says, you know what the Gemara means? It's not common. That wouldn't be strong enough of a reason to make it useful on Shabbos in terms of Hilchos Hotzah, but not that it is usher. The Shulchan Aruch says mutter, right? Source 39. Usher l'klo isha sar b'Shabbos. Avol yichol lach lok sara. She could part. The Rama seems to say it's usher v'chei noagu le'asar ayidei kli. Meaning if you use a specific type of kli to make a perfect part, but just with one's hands and brushing the hair to one side and the other side, that would be allowed. Okay, this is part 1 of this shiur, and that's all issues with hair and nails. Next time I'll talk about makeup and brushing teeth and applying other oils and creams. That'll be the next shiur that we will have.